Think about the dynamics of a human prison. The constant pressure, the power imbalances, the lack of control. Now imagine that, but with no possibility of parole, no hope of freedom. That was Tilikum's reality. During the off-season, when the park was closed to the public, the 3 orcas were confined to an even smaller, completely dark metal enclosure. This cramped space, barely larger than their own bodies, further intensified the tensions between them. Imagine being crammed into a dark, metal box with your bullies for hours on end, with nothing to do but stew in your own frustration and fear. This confinement was a pressure cooker, and Tilikum was trapped inside. The stress and aggression Tilikum endured at Sealand had profound consequences. He began to exhibit unusual behaviors, signs of deep psychological trauma. He became withdrawn, often floating motionless at the surface of the tank, seemingly unresponsive to his surroundings. He would grind his teeth, a clear indication of anxiety and stress. These weren't signs of a healthy, thriving animal. They were desperate cries for help, ignored by those who profited from his captivity. And then tragedy struck. In February 1991, a young part-time trainer, Kelty Byrne, slipped and fell into the orca tank while attempting to retrieve a bucket. The 3 orcas, including Tilikum, surrounded her. What followed was horrific. The orcas pulled her under the water, dragged her around the tank, and prevented her from surfacing. Other trainers watched in horror, unable to intervene. Kelty Byrne drowned. Sealand initially downplayed Tilikum's role in the incident, claiming that the 2 female orcas were primarily responsible, but the truth was far more complex. Tilikum, subjected to years of abuse and confinement, was undoubtedly a participant in the tragedy. While it's impossible to know the exact motivations of the orcas, the incident highlighted the inherent dangers of keeping these powerful, intelligent animals in captivity. The death of Kelty Byrne sparked outrage and controversy. Sealand of the Pacific faced intense scrutiny and ultimately closed down. Tilikum, however, was not released back into the wild. Instead, he was transferred to SeaWorld Orlando, where he would spend the rest of his life. SeaWorld presented Tilikum as a valuable breeding asset, a source of future generations of captive orcas. They downplayed his role in the Sealand incident, focusing instead on his potential to contribute to their breeding program. He became SeaWorld's most prolific breeder, fathering 21 calves. But even at SeaWorld, the signs of Tilikum's troubled past persisted. He remained unpredictable and difficult to work with. He was often isolated from the other orcas, further exacerbating his stress and loneliness. SeaWorld implemented a series of safety protocols to protect trainers from Tilikum, but these protocols were often inconsistent and inadequate. Tilikum continued to exhibit unusual behaviors, including aggression towards other orcas and trainers. He would often refuse to perform, showing signs of agitation and stress. These were all warning signs, red flags that should have prompted SeaWorld to reconsider their handling of Tilikum. But the allure of profit, the pressure to maintain the illusion of safety and control, overshadowed these concerns. The reality was this: Tilikum was a deeply traumatized animal. His capture, confinement, and the constant stress of performing had taken a profound toll on his mental and physical well-being. He was a ticking time bomb, and on February 24, 2010, that bomb exploded with devastating consequences. But to understand that fateful day, we need to look at the life of Orca Brancheau, a trainer who dedicated her life to these magnificent creatures. A woman who believed in the power of connection and trust. But that is the next tragic part of the story. The afternoon of February 24th, 2010, started like any other at SeaWorld Orlando. The sun was shining, families were streaming through the gates, eager to experience the thrill of marine life encounters. For Orca Brancheau, a seasoned and deeply respected trainer, it was just another day in a career she had dedicated her life to. But this day would be different. This day would become a turning point, a tragic marker etched in the annals of marine park history. Tilikum. The orca at the center of this tragedy had already participated in the Dine with Shamu show earlier in the day. This particular interaction wasn't a performance in the traditional sense. It was more of an opportunity for guests to observe trainers working with the whales in a less structured environment while they enjoyed a meal. Following this, Tilikum was moved to a smaller pool, one designed for more private interactions and training sessions. Dawn, with her signature ponytail and warm smile, was preparing to engage with Tilikum in a series of exercises. These weren't the high-energy leaps and splashes of the main shows. They were more focused, designed to reinforce established behaviors and build upon their existing relationship. Remember, Dawn wasn't just going through the motions. She genuinely believed in the connection she shared with these animals. The sequence of events that unfolded next is pieced together from eyewitness accounts, security footage, and the subsequent investigation. But the details are fragmented, leaving room for speculation and debate to this day. Dawn was lying on her stomach on a submerged platform, interacting with Tilikum. She was rubbing his body, speaking to him in calm, reassuring tones. This was a common practice, a way to build trust and reinforce positive associations. At some point during this interaction, Tilikum reached out and took hold of Dawn's ponytail. Now, here's where the accounts diverge slightly. Some suggest that Tilikum simply pulled Dawn into the water. Others believe that he may have gently tugged at her hair, perhaps as a sign of playfulness or curiosity. Either way, the outcome was the same. Orca Brancheau was pulled beneath the surface. What happened next was a horrifying display of power. Tilikum, a 60 apex predator, began to thrash violently. He pulled Dawn deeper into the water, preventing her from surfacing for air. Witnesses described a scene of chaos and panic, the water churning with the immense force of the whale. Trainers and staff rushed to the scene, desperately trying to intervene. They employed established emergency protocols, including throwing fish at Tilikum in an attempt to distract him and using nets to try and separate him from Dawn. But nothing seemed to work. Tilikum remained fixated on Dawn, refusing to release her. The situation escalated rapidly. It became clear that this was no accident, no playful interaction gone wrong. This was an attack, a deliberate act of aggression from an animal with a complex and troubled history. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only a matter of minutes, Tilikum surfaced with Dawn. But it was too late. Dawn was unresponsive, her body limp and lifeless. The scene was gruesome. Tilikum had inflicted severe trauma, including fractures, dislocations, and the near severing of her left arm. The park was immediately placed on lockdown. Guests were ushered out, many in tears, struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The vibrant atmosphere of SeaWorld was replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the sounds of sirens and the hushed voices of first responders. Behind the scenes, A frantic effort was underway to recover Dawn's body. Tilikum was eventually coaxed into a smaller medical pool, allowing the recovery team to safely retrieve her. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but their efforts were in vain. Orca Brancheau was pronounced dead at the scene. The news sent shockwaves. Around the world, how could this happen? How could a trainer with Dawn's experience and dedication be killed by an animal she had worked with for years? The questions were immediate and relentless. The aftermath was devastating. For Dawn's family, the loss was immeasurable. For her colleagues, the trauma was profound. And for SeaWorld, the incident triggered a crisis that would challenge its very existence. The park closed its doors temporarily as investigators descended upon the scene. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, launched a full investigation, meticulously examining every aspect of SeaWorld's training practices, safety protocols, and the history of Tilikum himself. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. Tilikum, due to his size and unpredictable behavior, had been involved in the deaths of 2 other people prior to Dawn's. These incidents, while tragic, hadn't resulted in significant changes to SeaWorld's policies or practices. The report painted a picture of a park that prioritized entertainment and profit over the safety of its trainers. It highlighted the inherent risks of working in close proximity to such powerful and unpredictable animals. It questioned the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity, particularly animals like Tilikum, whose history of aggression suggested they were simply not suited for life in a theme park. OSHA ultimately issued several citations against SeaWorld, citing numerous safety violations and demanding significant changes to the way trainers interacted with orcas. SeaWorld contested the citations, arguing that its existing safety measures were adequate and that the risks were inherent in the profession. As time wore on, Amber's movements became weaker, her struggles less frequent. The fight began to drain from her body, replaced by a chilling resignation. The hope that had fueled her initial resistance began to fade, replaced by the agonizing realization that rescue was unlikely. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Tilikum released Amber. Her lifeless body floated to the surface, a stark and tragic contrast to the vibrant, energetic trainer she had been just moments before. The scene that followed was one of utter devastation. The trainers, heartbroken and traumatized, pulled Amber from the water and began CPR, desperately clinging to the hope that they could somehow bring her back. But it was too late. Amber Collins was gone. The silence that descended upon Orlando was deafening, broken only by the sobs of those who witnessed the tragedy. The cheers and laughter, the carefully orchestrated spectacle, had been replaced by a profound sense of loss and a chilling reminder of the unpredictable nature of these magnificent creatures. The dream was over. Now reality of something going wrong, as it did, had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The immediate aftermath of Amber Collins' death was chaotic. SeaWorld Orlando, usually a beacon of manufactured joy, became ground zero for grief, anger, and intense scrutiny. The initial public reaction was a mixture of shock and disbelief. How could something so meticulously orchestrated, so seemingly safe, turn so tragically wrong? The news spread like wildfire, fueled by social media and a 24-hour news cycle hungry for answers. Graphic images and videos taken by park attendees flooded the internet, painting a horrifying picture of Amber's final moments. The cheerful spectacle that was once a highlight of family vacations became a symbol of corporate negligence and the inherent dangers of keeping killer whales in captivity. A wave of outrage washed over Protests erupted outside the park gates, with animal rights activists demanding the immediate release of all orcas into sanctuaries. The hashtag Justice for Amber trended worldwide, becoming a rallying cry for change within the marine park industry. Petitions circulated, calling for stricter regulations, improved trainer safety measures, and an end to orca breeding programs. The chorus of disapproval wasn't just from activist groups either. Former SeaWorld trainers began to speak out, anonymously at first, then with increasing boldness. They painted a disturbing picture of a company prioritizing profit over safety, where concerns about whale behavior were often dismissed or downplayed to maintain the illusion of control. They spoke of the immense pressure to perform, the inadequate training, and the inherent risks of working in such close proximity to powerful, unpredictable animals. These accounts, often filled with personal anecdotes and chilling nemesis, added fuel to the already raging fire. Simultaneously, multiple investigations were launched. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, immediately began its own inquiry, focusing on SeaWorld's safety protocols and whether they met legal requirements. The investigation delved into the park's training methods, emergency procedures, and the history of incidents involving orcas. Evidence was gathered, witnesses were interviewed, and a thorough review of SeaWorld's safety record was conducted. Alongside OSHA, the National Marine Fisheries Service, NMFS, initiated its own review, examining the legality of SeaWorld's permits to house and display orcas. This investigation scrutinized the park's compliance with the Marine Mammal Protection Act and assessed the potential impact of captivity on the whales' well-being. These investigations were not just bureaucratic exercises, they were battles that would determine the future of SeaWorld and the captive orca industry as a whole. The findings would shape public opinion, influence legal decisions, and ultimately determine whether SeaWorld could continue operating in its current form. The impact of Amber's death extended far beyond the immediate legal and regulatory consequences. It sparked a fundamental shift in public perception of orcas in captivity. The once beloved creatures, portrayed as friendly performers, were now seen as complex, intelligent animals suffering from the psychological and physical stresses of life in confined tanks. Documentaries like Blackfish, released shortly after Amber's death, played a significant role in shaping this evolving narrative. The film presented a compelling case against keeping orcas in captivity, highlighting the unnatural conditions, the truncated lifespans, and the documented instances of aggression towards trainers. Blackfish became a cultural phenomenon, further galvanizing public opposition to SeaWorld and prompting boycotts that significantly impacted the park's attendance and revenue. The company responded with a massive public relations campaign, attempting to refute the claims made in Blackfish and defend its animal care practices. SeaWorld launched initiatives focused on conservation and rescue efforts, highlighting its commitment to marine animal welfare. But the damage was done. The image of SeaWorld as a family-friendly entertainment destination was irrevocably tarnished. The years following Amber's death, SeaWorld underwent a series of significant changes. The company phased out its orca shows, replacing them with more educational presentations focused on the whale's natural behaviors. It also pledged to end its orca breeding program, marking a historic shift in its approach to animal care. While these changes were welcomed by many, some critics argued that they were too little, too late, and that SeaWorld should completely abandon its orca captivity program. Amber Collins' death became a watershed moment, not only for SeaWorld but for the entire marine park industry. It forced a long overdue reckoning with the ethical implications of keeping intelligent, social animals in captivity for human entertainment. Her legacy lives on through the ongoing efforts to improve trainer safety, advocate for marine animal welfare, and educate the public about the complexities of orca behavior. While the joy and wonder of seeing these magnificent creatures up close may remain, it now comes with a somber understanding of the sacrifices made and the profound questions raised by their lives behind glass walls. The ripples of that fateful day continue to spread, shaping our understanding of the relationship between humans and the wild, one wave at a time.